But we begin tonight with this. If you have been watching any TV lately, if you have been following Google Trends at all, you're probably aware that there's a big manhunt going on across the country tonight. Officials are searching for an escaped prisoner and his fiancée/cousin, who apparently helped him escape from a prison in Arizona. It's this sort of Bonnie and Clyde, but without the great acting getaway that has led to a cross-country police search, and it has captivated a lot of people in the process. Have you heard about this actually starting, though? Have you heard about how this whole story that has sort of captivated the country, this nationwide manhunt, these escaped prisoners, have you heard how the prison break that started it all actually happened? It was 3 guys in prison in Kingman, Arizona, and here's how they broke out of that prison. They walked through an unlocked door at their cell block. The door was unlocked. It was supposed to have an alarm on it, but the alarm either wasn't there or it didn't work. The alarm didn't go off. Then the prisoners walked over to the perimeter fence of the prison. The fiancé/cousin of one of the prisoners had driven her car up to the fence. Her car was plainly visible to the security cameras around the prison, but no one who worked at the prison seemed to notice when she drove right up next to that perimeter fence. She then threw some wire cutters over the fence to the 3 prisoners who were standing inside. The prisoners used the wire cutters to cut through the fence. That did set off an alarm, but no one who worked at the prison appeared to notice that alarm, let alone react to it. The alarm just went off and staff just ignored it. So the dudes walked through the fence they just cut, they got in the car, and they drove off. No one at the prison noticed the hole in the fence, or the alarm going off, or the car that drove up to the fence that was visible on the security cameras, or that the 3 prisoners were missing until 9 p.m. that night, 5 hours after these 3 prisoners were last seen by prison staff. After the prison realized that it had had 3 of its prisoners escape, they waited more than an hour before telling the local sheriff, who, I don't know, maybe might have been some help in apprehending the prisoners. They waited more than 2.5 hours before notifying the state corrections department. At this point, 2 of the escaped prisoners have been captured, but one of them, along with his fiancé/cousin/getaway driver/wire cutter thrower, is still at large. The head of the Department of Corrections in Arizona said of this incident, quote, "We have great concerns that there was laxness on the part of the security staff." Okay, first of all, yeah, you think? Second of all, it's kind of amazing to hear that admission, that is essentially an admission of guilt in a case like this, coming from the head of the State Department of Corrections, right? Actually, when you look at the details, turns out it's not that amazing, because you should consider that the prison that these 3 guys just essentially walked out of is not run by the state. Arizona has 15 prisons. 10 of them are run by the state. 10 of them are run by the Department of Corrections, by the government, if you will. But 5 of them are for-profit private enterprises. They are run by private prison companies, including this one in Kingman, where this prison break last month happened. What they describe as a minimum to medium security prison, about 12 miles outside of Kingman, Arizona. It's run by a company called MTC, Management and Training Corporation. MTC brags on being the 3rd largest private prison company in the country. MTC, like many private prison companies, has a bit of a checkered past. In the late 1990s, the company, which is based in Utah, brought on an executive named Lane McCotter. Mr. McCotter took the job at MTC after having resigned quite recently as the top prison official for the state of Utah. He resigned in the wake of a particularly brutal scandal involving a mentally ill man dying in custody after he was strapped into a restraint chair for 16 hours. Now, MTC at that time, Management and Training Corporation at that time, already had its own extensive track record of poor treatment of inmates. But regardless, soon after Mr. McCotter started his new gig at MTC, he was handpicked by John Ashcroft's Justice Department to go to Iraq. To go over to Iraq in the months after the U.S. invaded that country. Why send a private prison executive into a war zone? Well, according to the New York Times, quote, "It was Mr. McCotter who first identified Abu Ghraib as the best site for America's main prison and who helped rebuild the prison and train Iraqi guards." See, there's the private prison guy there with the circle around him, the MTC guy. He's at Abu Ghraib there giving a tour to Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz. After setting up the Abu Ghraib prison for American use, despite what Saddam Hussein had used it for. Lane McCotter left Iraq just before the Abu Ghraib prisoner abuse scandal broke. But meanwhile, the for-profit prison companies here at home were working their magic, including in Arizona. In September 2007, 2 convicted murderers broke out of a private prison in Arizona using ladders that they'd stolen from a maintenance building. In 1997, a convicted murderer and a sex offender broke out of another Arizona private prison. 1 year earlier, in 1996, 3 murderers and 3 other prisoners broke out of another Arizona private prison. After this incredible record of achievement, after all of these prison escapes from private prisons, how did the state of Arizona decide to proceed with the issue of prison privatization? Even as prison privatization declines around the country, even as state budget cuts make it so that many states are closing facilities or reducing their sentencing guidelines so that fewer people are in prison altogether. How did the state of Arizona decide to proceed? Last year, Arizona state officials moved legislation to try to privatize the whole state prison system. Arizona planned to seek bids from private companies for 9 of the state's 10 prison complexes. It was the first effort by a state to put its entire prison system under private control. Great news for the private prison companies, right? Great news in particular for Corrections Corporation of America, which is the single largest private prison company in the country. CCA already runs 6 detention facilities in Arizona. They hold prisoners from other states at their facilities in Arizona. They also hold the federal contract to hold federal detainees in the state. So, you know what would be awesome for a company like that? You know what would be awesome? It would be really awesome for the shareholders and everybody if the state of Arizona started producing a whole lot more federal detainees, people detained on federal issues like, I don't know, say, immigration violations. Imagine the boon to the private for-profit prison company that has the contract to house federal detainees in Arizona if Arizona came up with a wacky plan to arrest a lot more people for suspected immigration violations. Imagine how awesome a law like SB 1070 would be for an industry like the for-profit private prison industry in Arizona. Sure, it's an industry with an incredibly awful record in Arizona, but there is money to be made here, and it turns out that industry, particularly Corrections Corporation of America, which stands to benefit the most, that industry and that company in Arizona, they're really well connected. The CBS affiliate in Phoenix, KPHO, did some investigating on this subject. This is what they turned up.
Our CBS 5 investigation found 2 of Governor Brewer's top advisors have connections to CCA. Deputy Chief of Staff Paul Sensenman was a lobbyist for the company. His wife is still a registered lobbyist for CCA. Brewer policy advisor Chuck Coughlin owns High Ground Public Affairs, which also represents CCA.
Did Paul Sensenman or Chuck Coughlin have any input with you on signing SB 1070 into law?
Okay, we're done.
I mean, are you aware that they were lobbyists for Corrections Corporation of America?
Sorry, Morgan.
Governor, don't you think you should have disclosed that?
The governor did not answer those questions.
After initially dodging those questions, Governor Brewer's office eventually got back to the CBS affiliate, telling them this, quote, Paul Sensenman does not advise the governor on these issues. Corrections Corporation of America released a statement saying, quote, we did not lobby at any time anyone in Arizona on the immigration law. Then again, why would you need to lobby when 2 of the governor's top people are your lobbyist, your former lobbyist, and or married to your lobbyist?